Hello viewers, you're watching the Policy Times. Hello viewers, you're watching the Policy Times India Policy Show, a show where we bring a very important, pertinent policy issue and we discuss the challenges, the opportunities and the solutions for it. Now, a lot of lives and blood have been flown, a lot of lives have been sacrificed, blood have been flown to achieve democracy globally. Many countries in the world have achieved democracies today. Now, just to give a small background, though the democracy has been achieved, but the very pillar and efficiency of democracy depends on four important pillars of it: legislature, executive, we call the bureaucrats, judiciary, and media. Talking about legislature, we have a huge number of parliamentarians in our parliament. Now, if you see, a lot of researches would indicate that a majority or major number of parliamentarians will have severe criminal cases against them. And so is, if you see, the education level, the literacy level of these parliamentarians are equally very worth pondering and very shocking. To talk on now, coming to executive, executive is a very important pillar. They are all literate. The IAS, Indian Administrative Services officers, bureaucrats, then we have IPS officers. But then, despite having the literacy part of it, the education part of it, implementation of the law that is made in the legislature is remained very poor, and especially the poor and emerging countries are majorly suffering from the law implementation point of view. Coming to the third part, judiciary is again a group of very literate and highly qualified lawyers, judges that we have in this country. Not only India, we are taking over the global perspective, whether it is Africa, whether it is Asia or South Asia, different countries. The picture is almost same. We have educated lawyers, educated judges, but the number of cases pending in the court is massive. And the other part of this severity is the victim. When a victim seeks justice from the judiciary, the pain is so much, the delay makes it so painful also that he finally agrees to forget about the punishment and justice and all. That's the level of this thing. The fourth important part of the democracy is important pillar of democracy is media. And that is where we will talk today, because yesterday UNESCO has celebrated the World Press Freedom Day. Now, the World Press Freedom Day is a very important day to celebrate because media is the fourth pillar which ensures the effective functioning and efficient functioning of legislature, executive, and judiciary. To talk on this, I want to welcome and introduce Professor KG Suresh, who is a dean at School of Modern Media, UPES, and he is also the ex-director general at IIMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, the most elite institute. He is also a vivid writer. He writes for different magazines, different news portals. Second, I want to welcome and introduce from Sydney, Australia, Professor Kalinga Seneviratne. He is a lecturer at Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, and he's also a founder of Lotus Communication Network. He has been an international journalist and expert on international media and has been writing for decades on different issues. Welcoming you, I want to just ask you this basic question, to both of you, Professor. Maybe you started with Professor KG Suresh. The 2000 yesterday on 3rd May we celebrated this uh, World Press Freedom Day. Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary is our third panelist joining us, our regular panelist. Professor Chaudhary wanted to, in fact, I invite Professor Chaudhary to this to give the opening remarks. But the very basic background I want to develop that 2020 theme is journalism without fear and favor. And the very objective that this UNESCO is trying to set that assess the state of press freedom and defend the media from the attacks for their independence. These were three things particularly mentioned during the 2020 press freedom backgrounder that the United Nations SG Secretary General has also mentioned. Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary, Pro VC, and is also a Dean of the School of Media at Adams University based in Kolkata. Professor Chaudhary, your opening remarks on this journalism without fear and favor, the real freedom across the world and India in particular, and then the attack on journalism.
I first of all apologize for being late because I was in a sudden meeting with my chancellor and vice chancellor on Zoom, and these days these online meetings, I'm very sorry for it. And there is very senior friend of mine, Professor Suresh, and first time meeting. Namaste from India, Senaviratne sir. Thank you. Nice meeting you on e-meeting you. First time in life. Though there is lockdown, as you can see, I'm in my cabin only. I'm in my office only. Something is shooting is going on. So thank you, Akram, for inviting all of us and letting us meet. We are responsible for three institutes, so it's a good thing to meet and maybe together with Suresh sir and Sinaviratne sir, some contribution to press freedom and the discourse we can do starting today. The point, as we all know, May 3 UN General Assembly had declared it to be the Press Freedom Day, World Press Freedom Day. But unfortunately, the level of press freedom in our part of the society, our part of the world, has not been very high. As we know, India has 142nd position by World Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders, and this 142 is actually two positions lower. 140 it was last year. So that's first Norway for 4 years continuously. Norway has been topping. Finland second and Denmark third. In fact, there should be a case study to understand why these three nations are topping every year. There should be a deeper case study on that. And the lowest, as is understandably, North Korea is the lowest in positioning. Comparatively, I think Sri Lanka has a good positioning for that matter in South Asia, and to an extent. But Pakistan has a bad positioning, and that is also understandably. India's position in the last 2 years must have gone down also on the entire debate around Kashmir and the arrests that have been made in Kashmir recently also. Masrad Jahra and Pirzada Ashik. Pirzada Ashik is from respected newspaper, what do you call, Hindu. So they were arrested recent times, and then there was also curbs on the freedom of press during the 7-8 months after the abrogation of Article 370. Now, having said that, I do not only think that government is the only challenge to press freedom. There are other challenges also. Market itself is a challenge, by the way. So many owners in media today in India and elsewhere have gone into multiple businesses. So media is just one business, and often it is a tool or instrument to get things done in other businesses. So it becomes a tool of power. So owners' interest, and particularly the first generation owners, were very committed to press freedom everywhere. I know about Amar Ujala. I know about the times of what you call Indian Express during Ramnath Goenka's time. But later on, over a period of time, second, third generation, not just of these papers, across different papers, second, third generation had different purposes. Their businesses expanded. There was surplus money which they put into real estate, which they put into other places, and those interests had to be protected. Also, the many people from real estate tried to come into, or hospitality business tried to come into media. I mean, we know about the Sarda group, Sarda Chit Fund group in Eastern India, who tried to come into Bengal Post and Seven Sisters Post and all those media. They started Channel 10 and all have now gone kaput. So what is the owner's business interest, and particularly of second, third generation? Second, government pressures we are understanding, we know about it. I think maybe more discussion will do. Local pressures are also there. There are people, journalists at the local level, particularly. I know some independent-minded journalists were threatened by the landlords because the landlords were threatened by the local politicians or the local gundas for certain stories, investigative stories they were doing. And this is particularly true in Chhattisgarh state. So local pressures are also there. And there has been also in recent times, particularly post 2000, in the last 20 years, a rise of aspirations of the journalist class. Earlier, people who used to come into journalism had some ideals. and had some goals, some idealism, some commitment. But there has been also a rise for a desire for a certain lifestyle, and there have been salaries which are like, I mean, astronomical figures. I mean, we know, and Suresh ji also knows very well how tough it was for PTI UNI journalists to work earlier, and what it has become for the television anchors today. The comparison of the lifestyle is completely different. So while I do not hold any brief for any government, Congress or BJP led, both have been curbing press freedom sometime or the other. Emergency of Indira Gandhi is the worst curbing of freedom of press that could have happened to India. And similarly, what is now the situation in Kashmir under the India government is also a bad example of press freedom curbing. But having said that, the market situations, faulty business models, high cost of production, leading to compromises of ethics, and a change in the lifestyle of journalists, plus the local pressures. All these have combined together to create a compromised journalism today. But there are strength also. Let us look at the strength. We have a large society, so number of people who can take is large. And with the digital technology coming in, the audience becomes sans borders, across borders. The technology is there. There is a good tradition in South Asia, whether it's in Pakistan or in Sri Lanka or India or Nepal, even Bangladesh. Media has played a constructive role across the last 70, 80 years, whether it's evolution of democracy in Nepal, or let's say fight against military juntas in battle against military juntas in Pakistan and Bangladesh, whether the role of media in Indian freedom or later on against emergency. So there has been a good tradition. So I would say that our tradition of journalism is a strong point, and some good educational institutes have also come up. I mean, Suresh ji was Director General of one of the best, finest institutes here, IIMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, and today he is setting up another strong institute. I have been the director of Symbiosis Media School, and then Amity, and setting up now Adamus Media School. And I really appreciate Suresh ji. He has recently come out with the guidelines for journalists during COVID period, during the current pandemic period, in association with Gill Foundation. This is the work that media school should do: contribute to the polemics, to the constructive debate. So rather than blatant criticism of any and everyone, we should actually look at how we can create new business models,
Right.
because compromise comes through business
Right.
models.
I'll
So
come
I
back.
will end my opening comments by saying, let educational institutes be not the tail ender of the industry, but harbinger of the industry or the head of the industry, and create research-based outcome which press freedom can gain from. That's my opening comment.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Professor Chaudhary. I will come to Professor KG Suresh. You have been one of the media academic veteran, in fact. And now you have you have founded director of IAM, Director General of IIMC, the best, one of the best and finest institutions of this country. Now you are with the University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, again establishing the media division there. Point is, should we celebrate or we should introspect actually? Today, sitting in 2020, how do you view the media press freedom, credibility, information correctness?
Thank you, Akram. First of all, fraternal greetings to one and all on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, and great connecting with my dear friend Professor Chaudhary, and also, Professor Kalinga Seneviratne. He was my guest at IIMC earlier, and now he is right now based out of course, Bangkok, but now in Sydney. Great connecting with you, and well, Professor Chaudhary has already given an overview, but I just want to, in the context of what you asked me, you see, we are going through a very critical phase. While all this, we have been discussing freedom and, related issues, Corona is going to change not just the world, but also the media in a big way.
Very good. Well said.
So, we are not looking just in, earlier we used to say before Christ and Anno Domini, before Google and after Google. Now it's going to be, the world is going to be divided into clearly two parts: BC and AC, before Corona and after Corona. This world is going to be different. And that is what we have to see. Will there be the press? We are talking about press freedom. For that, press has to be there. As they say, jaan hai to jahan hai. Press hai to press freedom hai. What is going to happen to press? Today, print media, which was already facing a lot of, trouble on account of digitization, on account of the internet, many newspapers had already wound up in the West. In India also, newspapers like DNA had wound up. But today, because of COVID, despite clarifications by WHO, the Information and Broadcasting Minister, you have people still looking at newspaper as a possible carrier of the coronavirus. People are not touching it. Only few localities are allowing. I am fortunate to be one of them. I am getting the newspapers. But newspapers themselves, my friend Ruben Banerjee is the editor of Outlook. He has suspended the publication for the time being. They are only online. Many newspapers have gone online in a big way. India Abroad has closed down its print edition. It is now online. Now, what is going to be the future? Are the people coming back to newspapers once the situation normalizes? What will be the new normal? Are we going to go back to the old days, or is there going to be a new normal? That is something that needs to be looked at. For me, Akram, another issue that is bothering me is that even at a time when even the Prime Minister had appealed to all the media houses and everybody in the country to ensure that nobody is laid off at this particular time. Nobody is retrenched, removed from job. I'm sorry to say that media should be the leader of the society. They are the beacon lights. They are the molders of public opinion. Couldn't they wait for even 2 months? Just 1 month? And so many media houses, and they too leading ones, they have thrown out people from their payrolls. That's really painful. At this critical juncture, when media is at the forefront of the fight against corona, media is, media persons are risking their lives. So many media persons in Mumbai, in Chennai, you name it, in Delhi, they have been detected corona positive.
Right.
At that time, you are hearing of news that they are being laid off, sent on leave without pay. Can there be a greater threat to freedom of press? Professor Chaudhary has already elaborated on several issues. One of the biggest problems, I'm sorry to say, has been the weakening of the trade unions, the media trade unions. They have been weakened like anything because nobody is implementing the wage boards. The Working Journalists Act and the Wage Board has now been merged and made part of the labor code. So, where is the protection for a journalist?
Right. Thank you.
Who is implementing Wage Board?
Right.
So, there is a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads perennially. So, we cannot be talking about freedom of press without the journalist being safeguarded, his interest being safeguarded, his job being secured. I think that is fundamental to the freedom of, speech and expression. That is fundamental to press freedom. We have to secure, and even the governments have a role in that,
Absolutely.
And, there are provisions like Journalist Welfare Fund in the Information and Broadcasting Ministry. I think that should be put to good use. Our fraternity is really going through a critical time, and we should be looking at it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Professor, excellent point. I think I'll come with this later on. Professor Kalinga, I want to introduce you've been listening patiently, and the interesting background that you hold. You're coming from Sri Lanka, now working in Bangkok, but now in Sydney. Kindly give
Very
us a
interesting.
background about the press in all three different countries and all three different regions.
Yeah, hello. Now, I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, but I never worked there because my family migrated to Australia when I had just finished schooling. And Then I have uh, actually I spent about 15 years in Singapore. And it's very interesting, actually. I was in Australia. I'm actually an Australian citizen. My family lives here. For 10 years, I was fighting the Australian media, and it's a white institution. So, I have written a book recently called, this is a book called The Myth of Free Media and Fake News in the Post-Truth Era, and it was published by Sage. And in that, I argue that the watchdog journalism theory or the fourth estate theory is a myth. We are teaching a mythology in all our journalism schools all over the world because it doesn't work anywhere. Not even in Australia, not even in the US, even in India. It's public relations journalism you do. I have done a number of done a number of interviews and written about it in the book. I also talk about the ANAP revolution. That's a another very interesting model of journalism where you don't need to have camera crews and all that cost. You just have like here. Three, four people on the screen, and you shout at each other, and that is news. And there is some news value in it. Some of you may disagree, but I think the main point where we are coming to here is the ownership. I think Professor Chowdhury raised it. Now, I also, based in Singapore, I was head of research at AMIC, Asian Media Information and Communication Center, for 7 years. And every year we used to organize this UNESCO, press freedom meetings. Once we had it in Maldives, another time in Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, a number of places. And I always had a problem with UNESCO's concept of this press freedom, based purely on it's like gospel truth, the fourth estate theory. Now, what I see is from my own practice, I have been a freelance journalist, and for 7 years I was working as IPS journalist for IPS from Australia, covering Australia and the Pacific. And I know the constraints you have in journalism, and it also depends on who owns the media, and that is very important. And that's where the UNESCO even doesn't bring that up in most of the meetings. I have taken it up with UNESCO a number of times. Now, if you take a lot of us take even when we teach media freedom, we take this Freedom House map you may have seen. It has been for free. So in this area, in the Asia Pacific area, Australia is green, and I think India is red here. I thought it was yellow before. Yeah, that is partly free, and then and now it's black. China and places like that which are not free. Now, if you look at Australia, which is supposed to be a free, now they are using yellow. Okay. Now, 70% of the Australian media is owned by Rupert Murdoch, or almost all the newspapers. And it's a highly concentrated media ownership model there. So if you bring media ownership, I don't think a lot of the countries like Australia, Europe will be yellow, even America. Now, in America, I can remember during the 1991 Gulf War, I was watching on television those smart bombs going and bombing these are footage we got from two American news channels, and which were broadcast all over the world as news, how smart bombs are hitting targets, no blood, no dead bodies. But if you, it's only a few years later when Robert McChesney and Herman wrote a book that I found out that these two television channels were owned by General Electric and Westinghouse, the manufacturers of those bombs. So were we watching news or were we watching advertisements? I think same question we can be asking from a lot of these news channels today. Even in India, a lot of the news channels, I think Professor Chowdhury mentioned it, are owned by conglomerates with a lot of other interest in it. So are they say the watchdog journalism theory, what is called a libertarian theory of the free media, says that the media has to be privately owned and But privately owned today doesn't mean that it's independent. Just being independent of the government is not enough. We have to be independent of a lot of vested interest. And big corporations are bigger threat today than governments. And when they own the media, who's going to stand up for the people who have been exploited? More than by the governments, it's by big business. Um, so there is this theory, Noam Chomsky's theory, called manufacturing consent. And a lot of the books now I have found all over Asia, we use books written by mainly Americans for American universities. And we use it sometimes very blindly without critically looking at it and teach students about the American media as the free media, the model of free media, when it is not. Trump himself says, and I agree with Trump, what he's saying about the American media, mainstream media. So now I have found that manufacturing consent theory is hardly explained or discussed in those books.
Right. Thank you.
So,
Sorry, I am cutting you short here. Sorry, Professor Kalinga, because I want some specific answer. We know the challenges that are there. In fact, many common people also know that these are the challenges. Dr. Suresh, Professor Prabhu, you can like move your mobile on the horizontal format, please. So that way we can have the bigger frame. Now I want to come to some basic specific questions, and I would like our experts to give some answers in a very bullet format or in a points. So, Professor Suresh, can you hear us?
Yes, yes, I can.
You can move your mobile on the horizontal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was on laptop, but then there was a problem with the net, so I've shifted to my mobile. So it will be in a
You are
vertical
looking
position
more
only.
handsome in the mobile. You are looking more handsome now. It's okay.
So, specific question.
Yes.
Elections are the foundation of democracy, and media's effectiveness and coverage of election news is a very critical thing, and we need to observe that. Now, talking about elections, there has been tremendous evidences and incidences how media tries to in fact fabricate before the election event through all the pre-polls and all exit polls that we call. Then during the poll, the kind of coverage, the kind of manifestation, kind of manipulations that media does gives a lot of questions. Now we all know what the questions to be asked. So now the point is, what are the answers to we bring? What are the solutions can we think of? Because we know ownership brings a problem. And as Professor Kalinga has very clearly said, that private ownership does not make media independent or free. Then what are the solutions to or should we find today? How do we make media more serious to disinfect or from doing misinformation during the election and fight for the nation?
Just couple of points. You have rightly pointed out that paid news has become a big menace. The election commission has taken that into cognizance. Some politicians have already lost out because of the strictures by the courts in this regard. You have had serious situation in Punjab, in Maharashtra. You have seen how paid news has sought to wreak havoc. On the one page in Punjab, I remember those days in one page you will have a report saying that a particular candidate is winning, which is a sponsored one, and in the inside page you will have a story saying he is losing. In one page you will have front page, you will have a story saying that a particular election rally was a flop, and in the inside page you will have a report saying that it is a success. So newspapers think that's the way of balancing out things, but it doesn't work like that. And it has the potential to create a lot of confusion in a democracy, and that has to be checked. Well, the election commission has put in place certain mechanisms and all that, but the fact remains that so long as corporate interests are in place and profit remains the main motive, there will always be during elections some proxy way of offering certain patronage coverage to politicians, and all these groups come together. At that time, it's a coterie that is there at play, and now it is no more the journalist who is paid. The journalist has just been removed out of the scene. Now it is the proper media houses that are actually their marketing departments which are doing it. I don't want to name it. It won't look fair to name just one of the names. But the fact remains that they are doing it now officially. Okay. Now there are a couple of solutions if you look at it, if you may call it one. One, I believe that there should be more cooperating and trust model of publications rather than, of course, it's a wish. I do not know when it will come true. But I think journalists should form cooperatives, journalists should form trust, and then start having, publications rather than the corporates having it as an extension of their industry to act as a cover, to act as a proxy for some political parties. That is one way of doing it. The second is, Akram, at the end of the day, you and I, who have no qualms in paying 360 rupees for a packet of caramel coated popcorns in a cinema hall, should learn to pay for independent media. We should start paying. Only that is we are expecting the moon from the media. We are expecting the media to be independent, to be neutral, to be objective. All expectations are there, but we are only ready to pay 2 or 3 rupees for a newspaper whose production cost is not less than 30 rupees at 1/10 of cost. So long as the newspapers remain, publications, channels remain dependent on corporates, you don't expect them to take care of your interests. They will certainly be taking care of the interests of their owners, their stakeholders. That will be their priority. That is something you and I should remember.
Excellent.
And my practical hope, the two are certainly good options, but the practical hope is from, though I do not agree with the term citizen journalism, but it has to be a lot more proactive communication on the part of the citizens who will have to tell this media. Like they say that for an effective and strong democracy, you need an enlightened citizenship. Similarly, for an effective media, a strong fourth estate, you need enlightened readers, enlightened viewers, and enlightened listeners. They will have to respond. They will have to. You cannot be sitting in your boardrooms, your drawing rooms, and criticizing media. You will have to be proactive. Today, you have the remote control in your hand. This is a very powerful tool. It is what you watch that bark will communicate. And this is one powerful tool with you. Which newspaper you buy, which websites you visit, that is going to decide on their fortunes. So for God's sake, start exercising. The people will have to start exercising their options. The way they effectively are exercising their options in elections, they will have to exercise. They cannot be mute spectators. Media is too important to be left to media persons alone. Sorry. I think everybody will have to take charge if we want to protect and safeguard democracy.
Excellent point, Professor Chaudhary.
Yeah, very well said. I agree that there are issues on all the sides. On the side of the people, they must be ready to pay for it. And there should be new business models which can be crowdsourced business model, donation based business model,
Absolutely.
higher fees based business model. Even Guardian is seeking donations. In India, several news portals run on support of the readers, whether it's News Laundry or Scroll or Where or many others. So it is important that people have to be ready to pay for what they consume. That's point one. Point two, on the side of the owners, the point is this concept of owning newspaper, the way you own a house or a car, cannot be accepted.
Absolutely.
And there has to be an enlightened ownership or a collective ownership, like Tribune has a collective ownership.
Yes.
And there has to be different forms of ownership. Cooperative, as Professor Suresh has told, cooperative is one, collective or trust owned, Tribune is trust owned. So there has
Samaj is there, Samaj.
right, Samaj, yes. So there has to be different forms of ownership. Even if a company is owning or a family is owning, then also there has to be an enlightened ownership and not using it as an instrument to make money elsewhere. That's on the owner's side. From the government side, one who looks very powerful today is a cipher tomorrow. So, at one point of time, LK Advani, the then opposition leader, told during emergency that Indira Gandhi wanted people to bend, some media started crawling. So, this has happened. Several media actually crawled. That time also, and at times even now as well. So, the point what I'm trying to say is that the government has to understand an enlightened free media, a watchdog media, is a strength of a government. Then the government, for example, the migrant laborers transportation problem in India, which was so acute in the last 1 month, was not so strongly highlighted, and ideas were not given how to sort it out. 30 days, 45 days later, they are now being transported by train and bus, when the cases in India is 45,000. But when it was 3,000, they could have been done the same thing easily. But having said that, so the government, it is in interest of the government to have an enlightened watchdog media. A lapdog media does not help. The proof is North Korea. The North Korean media is the biggest lapdog. There cannot be more comparison to that. I mean, any bigger compromise.
Points taken, Professor Chaudhary. Professor Kalinga. Now, couple of issues. Elections being the one I have highlighted the most, because elections ensure a transparent democracy, and if election is wrong, the entire democratic process would be wrong, and politicians would be very happy to use or leverage media for its own purpose. Now, how do we make media extremely responsible during elections and even post-election, and to pick the right candidate for the country?
Yeah, now, during the recent elections in Sri Lanka, I monitored it quite closely, especially social media and also the mainstream media coverage of it. And every day I used to get video clips and various news items from social media, which were mainly against Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who ultimately won the elections. And it seems to be well funded. I don't know where the money comes from. Some of them are very creative. But still, he won the elections with a heavy majority, especially among the Buddhist Sinhalese voters. Now, how he ran the election campaign was through temples and the temple networks. And also he went to these rural areas. It was very old-fashioned type of uh, campaign he ran to win the elections. And I suppose Modi's first election was also won in a similar way. And Duterte in the Philippines did a similar thing. Didn't mainstream media was completely against him. So in one way, especially with populist candidates now, the fact that social media is cheap to make, and there is an alternative to the mainstream. If you cannot get into the mainstream, if the mainstream is against you or it costs you to run the advertisements. But at the same time, we should not forget before the social media came, there were advertising, there were a lot of misrepresentation. They used to do all sorts of events. They used to have street theater in Sri Lanka. There's what used to be called Kavikola poetry was used. So this mudslinging and all these misrepresentations in a political campaign were there for a long time, as far as we know. So it's not a new thing. It's what is new is the technology being used, and maybe it's the technology and the internet and the transmission has become cheaper and faster and more widespread. But I don't think we should look at it as a new thing, which just the technology has changed. So how do you make elections fair? Uh, it's very difficult argument because in a democracy, we know all over the world, money counts. And one of the biggest problems is uh, the vote buying uh, of how uh, candidates can buy votes. So those who have more money are much more likely to win election. But sometimes maybe the social media the access to social media, the low cost of production, has somewhat made the field narrow now. It's sometimes a good thing rather than a bad thing. That you don't need big money in terms of advertising, buying media access. So, yeah.
Thank you.
On the election point, I want to say something. Social media is a democratic open media. So
Right.
every political party or pressure group has the liberty to tell what they want to sway the opinion. Nothing wrong. Regular social media is not our mainstream media unless the social media is created by the mainstream, like Hindu social media or Times of India social media. My basic point is what I think Suresh ji mentioned it earlier. There is no need to continuously unabatedly give vote swings and mood analysis. Why not the issues analysis? Suppose there is an issue of amendment of RTI or amendment of the environmental assessment law. So why the different political parties stand on that cannot come comparatively, or NRC, CAA, or any issue. Let the discussion. Unfortunately, media could not even ask, and therefore, political parties in India, particularly, and other countries, sir can say, Senaviratne sir can say, but at least in India, they come out with the manifesto 2 days before the election.
Absolutely.
Just 2 days, irrespective of any party. Hardly there has been an election where a manifesto has come 1 month earlier.
Right.
And there is no comparative analysis.
Yes.
People don't ask you, look, you had promised this in the last manifesto. What happened to that promise?
Exactly.
Questions are not asked. There is no presidential style debate like that happens in US or
Very
for
good.
that matter even in JNU.
Auditing of the manifesto promises of last time
Yes.
and comparative analysis of the manifesto promises on the same issue this time.
Yes.
Also understanding how realistic is a promise when the BJP government this time promises 100 lakhs crores infrastructure. One has to ask, how do you raise the money? When Congress promises Nyay or 12,000 rupees minimum basic guaranteed income for every Indian, there should
Where
be.
does it come from?
Right. Excellent. I want to present some facts, and maybe the question will come from those facts. Number one, during the entire corona epidemic, we saw how the entire media was behind Tablighi Jamaat, where they should have addressed the real issue of the failure of addressing this issue. That is one. The Rohingya crisis, when like over a million Rohingyas were brutalishly thrown out, killed on the road, they were evicted from the country. They were like, there cannot be any brutality more than what we have seen on Rohingya issue. But and the terrorism issue, and then Islam. Islam is just like any other religion. Maybe it is Hinduism, Buddhism, or Christianity, or Judaism, or whichever language or religion you talk about. But the kind of Islamophobic or Islamophobia that you've seen in media, and this is particularly the media, because here the role that media has played is unpardonable. So I just want to show a small meme. I in fact don't want to show this. This might be a little racist, but this is what the level of credibility of media has gone down to. Now, in one hand, the politicians like Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi or Arvind Kejriwal or Atishi, they have through the social media the ability and capability to connect and communicate on a one-to-one basis through social media. So that has given a transparency for the politicians to reach out to their people. So for that, the politicians do not need media. On the other hand, now the media has redefined their role to be a propaganda machine, because now they can't be a mediator between the politicians and the people. Now they have taken a different stage instead of taking the role that you are now suggesting. That's another perspective. Now in this context, because now politicians don't or no longer will need media to communicate with their mass or with their people, what redefined role should this media have, or should the media take, so that they remain relevant constructively and positively?
Akram, allow me to speak for 2 minutes on this and leave because there's one more message coming for another meeting in 10 minutes' time. So the point is very good and it is important. I was wanting to listen to Suresh Saab also on this because we often debate on many issues in social media, which is a good thing. In fact, the thing that we do is what should be done. Healthy polemical debate. Nothing wrong in having different positions. And everyone should not be having the same position, then it is not a democracy. So very good. We do a good thing, but unfortunately, I have to leave. So maybe you speak after me. I can listen to the argument a bit. The point I wanted to tell in Tablighi Jamaat issue, factually, it was wrong to organize Tablighi Jamaat meet in middle of March. It was wrong, and media should point out. Two, who allowed the Tablighi Jamaat foreign delegates coming in with Corona on the 12th of March? Who gave them visa? Who checked them at the airport? That question has to be asked. Media did not focus on this part. Third, who allowed them to actually do the program for 10 days in the heart of Delhi? So it is the Delhi police that had to be taken into consideration, particularly after the government of Delhi gave advisory against it. That was also not done. But after that, mix of, and which we did not discuss so far, mix of lies, old visuals of someone spitting on fruits, no visual presented of any misbehavior with nurses and all, but all these were concocted, and many of this pandemic has led to infodemic. Many of these infodemic false news were busted by many busters, my fake news busters later on. But a series of fake news have gone. In fact, one of the challenges of media today is this huge wave of fake news. Fake news of all types, left, right, center, all types.
No, so
So
fake
that
news
is
is a
good.
different propaganda. Fake
Now,
news is
now I wanted to
I'm
answer to
talking
your
about
question.
the
I want,
irresponsible
I wanted to answer
local
to your
media
basic.
also, big media
I
also.
wanted to answer to your basic question of what was that part you said after Tablighi Jamaat that
The Rohingya issue, the Rohingya issue,
Rohingya. No, then
the
the question.
terrorism issue.
Rohingya is a serious issue, no doubt. It is not about terrorism, it's more about human rights. That's fine. But
Right.
you have asked about one more thing at the end. Well, how should okay, you have
So we
said
will make media
politicians don't
responsible
need media.
and
Yes,
relevant today.
politicians don't need media. They have got a direct monkey bath. They have got a direct, I mean, Modi is the highest followed, I think after Obama, second highest followed Twitter on Twitter. So that's fine, great. So the social media has democratized and created direct evidence. Having said, and it will increase because digital power is increasing. By the way, all this social media followership of many political parties and leaders, irrespective of them, there are bots and artificial followers as well. We know that, just for point I'm telling. But this is the truth that there is direct communication through official and unofficial media, social media, and government controlled media of different political parties and leaders to the people. So, what should be the role of the media in this redefined situation? The media has to once again find its old feet, the original feet. The feet is that you are a watchdog. You are here not to parrot what others speak, but to analyze and present facts, figures, investigations, and analysis. You can give your platform to multiple points of view on the same theme rather than taking one position alone. And you have to be responsible to your readers and not to your advertisers alone. Because you have increased the cost of production very high, cost of media very high, you become dependent on advertisement. And therefore, the whole market economies dominate the culture and the content of media. The culture and the content of media, if it has to be free, independent, it has to be responsible to the people and watchdog of the government. And it has to be low cost. Media cannot sustain editors getting salaries of 4 or 5 crores. There are dozens of editors in the country now who are above 5 crores a year. That's the lifestyle of a CEO. It
Thank
is
you.
not required for a
I want to hear from Professor Suresh.
Suresh.
Professor KG Suresh, how do you view this entire?
Thank you. Thank you. I think Professor Chaudhary has raised some very important issues. And, Akram, let me tell you, first of all, let me very categorically say that as a responsible Indian myself, I would say, you know, might be some sections may have tried, but there is no Islamophobia in this country. We have coexisted, Hindus and Muslims, together for 1,000 years in this country, and one no competition.
Sir,
They fear,
there is
they
slight
fear,
issue on
they
your.
fear the extremist elements. That is it. The common man does not fear. I have no fear of Muslims. My Muslim friends don't fear me.
Right.
So there is no Islamophobia in Indian society. Some sections might have tried. I'm not refusing that. I totally,
Fair.
yes,
I'm talking about the media, sir.
yes.
So,
Okay.
how do
Yeah,
you
coming to your point, yes,
in addressing those issues?
yes. Now, yes, the fundamental things that we used to do whenever, suppose, obviously in a huge country there could be law and order problem, and I remember as a young journalist, whenever we used to hear that there is a clash over some issue, superficial issue between two sections of society, the first thing we were taught in journalism was to approach the elders of the community and make
Right.
them issue an appeal for peace and calm. And I remember doing the same thing as part of the WHO polio communication review team when
Right.
there was a resistance to polio in Hooghly, in West Bengal, and in Western Uttar Pradesh. We approached the Maulanas and the Maulvis, and they served as the social influencers. They gave a clarion call during their Friday prayers, and the people then started giving polio doses to their children. So it is always an appeal to the elderly. But unfortunately, some TV channels invited the rabid elements of certain community
Right.
and then made them make the most provocative statements, and
TRP.
then petty politicians belonging to different parties, different sections, and they made, to score a political point, they made rabidly communal statement and thereby vitiated the atmosphere. So to
Right.
that extent, I hold certain sections of the media responsible for vitiating the atmosphere and creating animosity.
Thank
Yes,
you.
that is there.
Thank you. Correct. How do you find the solutions, Professor Kalinga? Now, what?
Yeah, now on this point, I must point out that we have a big problem. It's right across the world, and especially in the Asian region. Those foreign funded NGO media, now the role they play in raising all these concerns about all sorts of phobias. Now, very often, I call them dollar chasing democracy vendors, because they are doing a job for Western countries to destabilize our countries. In Sri Lanka, it was the Tamils. In Myanmar, it's the Rohingyas. In India, it's the Dalits. In China, it's the Uyghurs. So you find this, and they use human rights. Now, one problem I had with this human rights is now all the minorities have rights, but the majority has no right. They have no right to protect their heritage. Now, this is what the Buddhists in Sri Lanka or Myanmar is saying, the Hindus in India are saying about they have a long heritage and they need to protect it, not by killing others or suppressing others, but that is a human right. Now, let me give you an example. About 2 years ago, I was at a press club in Bangkok, and a Rohingya refugee who lives in London, it was called the Myanmar Human Rights Organized Network. He presented a report about discrimination against Muslims and he gave a lot of examples, and I don't dispute it. But the thing is, same things happen to Muslims in Australia, in Europe. Same discrimination happens. They are being suspected and they are being monitored. They are under surveillance. So he says the Buddhists are doing this to Muslims. So I pointed out to him, when the same thing
That's a
happens
very
in the
wrong
West, they
precedence.
say it's
It's
a
not a
national
Buddhism.
security issue. Why can't, and the Myanmar government will say it's a national security issue.
No, no. This cannot be a national security issue. Whether it is a government who says it, you can't kill millions of people or hundred thousands of people.
No,
Myanmar,
Myanmar government,
that is
Myanmar
where I'm
army is very
reflecting.
ruthless. Now they are fighting today Arakan nationalists who are Buddhist, and it's not reported. I'm sure same things they did to the Rohingyas
No,
are
killing.
being done to these Arakan nationalists.
So
But because
this
they are not seen as a
Myanmar government
minority, they
is
don't
not
fall into this.
talking about that. No, there is no point in talking about that. The Myanmar government is protecting its national security by killing the Rohingya. The point here is, again, that's the interpretation that goes wrong often in the discussion. Again, my point is, I was asking about the solutions, like how do we make media responsible? So that Buddhism interpretation might be wrong, but the role of media, the role of the global media. So everyone knows that things were wrong with the Rohingyas. But why did media, only apart from BBC or Al Jazeera or a couple of the international channels, most of the channels played the role of a propagandist. That's what we have seen globally. But coming point to other angle, I want to ask that investigative journalism is a very important part of journalism. But in today's context, I think the investigative journalism is going tougher and more challenging. The other is the online version of it has made, again, media very complicated. Now, a very basic question: do we or should we give regulations on online media, or do you want the online media or social media should be self-regulated? That's one. How do we promote more investigative journalism so that the real issues which are always behind the curtain, they also come to the public? Because at the end of the day, a journalist is also working for the national interest as much as a politician is working, as much as a bureaucrat is working, as much as a judiciary person working. How do we protect the investigative journalism and promote investigative journalism in today's context? How do we restrict or redefine the online media in today's context?
Yeah, now investigative journalism needs money. Now the question is, where are you going to find the money from? Now let me give you an example. This was about almost 10 years ago. I was doing a radio documentary on undocumented Myanmar its illegal workers working in Thailand. They had about 1 million there, and they're highly exploited in Thailand. They come across the border, and I was told this story when I interviewed a union official in Thailand, how boys from Myanmar are being kidnapped, brought across the border, and put in ships, fishing trawlers, which catch shrimps. And Thailand is one of the world's biggest shrimp exporters. And they are for 2 years. And when they get sick, they are thrown overboard. It's absolute slavery. Now, for me, I did not want to investigate that story because I was doing a freelance job and my life would have been in danger because these are, from what I worked out, these are organized crime. Even the armies on both sides may be involved in this. And I didn't want to do the story. About 3 or 4 years later, London's Guardian did the story because they had the funds. They had the funds, or probably they may have bought the protection, and they had paid NGOs to take them around, and they did a story which became an international story. And then they have a campaign, consumer boycott in Europe against Thai shrimps. And Thailand now says they have stopped this. They passed legislation. I don't know how well it works, but they claim that they have stopped this slavery. So that's an example of there's so many issues here. Money in one side, the security of yourself on the other side. So it's a very complex story. They have a very complex situation.
Professor KG Suresh. Yeah, right.
Yes. Akram, I don't, yes, I don't, see the role of state too much in this, either in promoting investigative journalism or in regulating, the kind of stuff that you mentioned. Because the moment the governments come into the picture, there is always a hue and cry over a threat to freedom of speech and expression, you see. So I think the government should keep that safe distance, at an arm's length. I think we should have, so far as accountability is concerned, I think we should have a more powerful Media Council of India. Right now, we have a Press Council of India. We should have a wider Media Council of India, which should have within its purview not just the print media, but also the electronic and digital media. It should have judicial powers. It should be a constitutional body. It is already a constitutional body which passes judicial powers. We should give more teeth to it. Right now it is seen as a toothless tiger. So we need a more, we should give it more teeth. That is very important, the regulator. And it has to be a representative of the industry, representative of the media. And yes, so far as the investigative journalism is concerned, I think that is a step that media houses should take. You see, now they are taken to the easy route. They have all these panel discussions,
Hmm.
prime time. They will make four people sit and fight among each other. Now
Right.
that comes cheaper also. You don't have to put foot soldiers on the ground. You don't have all those expenses involved. You just have to bring in four panelists and make them fight each other. And that will get you the audience. I think we should go back to the original journalism. We should have the pursuit of truth and objectivity. We should be investing more in investigative journalism. We should be utilizing the power of the right to information, RTI. And I think that that is something that media houses should invest
Excellent.
more in. Yes.
Excellent point by Professor Suresh, KG Suresh. Last question, and this is the pertinent question that I want to have your view on this. How long can we afford to, or should we continue to afford or use national security concerns to justify or control media, free media?
Okay, you see, thing is, it's a very important issue because uh, the free media sometimes, like I mentioned to you, NGOs, they
Right.
are funded to destabilize countries. So if you are funded from overseas or even within the country from various vested interests, where do you draw the line
Hmm.
of freedom of expression and the national security issue? So which is a important issue. I don't know what the uh, are you going to give a
The line.
uh,
It's difficult.
now one of a Chinese friend of mine a few years ago, a communication professor, came for a conference in Delhi, and the very first day before the conference, she went on a day trip to Agra, and she said, "Why can't the Indian government clean up these shanties as you leave Delhi? It gives a very bad impression, first bad impression to a foreigner." Then I said, you can clean up those shanties in Beijing before the Beijing Olympics, and nobody protested. But in India, if they try to do it, there will be so many NGOs with protest and trying to stop it. It will create a huge problem for the government. So that's the uh, difference in the two systems. Now, which is the best system? Okay. Uh, uh, uh,
Right.
Chinese would argue where our country is working. We have shown that it's working. Your country is chaotic. Too much, too much freedom and too much democracy. Where do you draw the line? Maybe a middle part somewhere.
Okay. Professor KG Suresh.
Yes, absolutely. You see, there is no doubt that if national security is certainly important, and there are all kinds of manipulations, distortions being happening from across the border and the enemies of the country who are trying to destabilize. But having said that, yes, eh, the free the press should be seen not as an antagonist. Press should be seen as a partner. And when you see the press as a partner, press would highlight the genuine grievances. I mean, look at the way the prime minister, called all the media houses for a conference before bringing in the lockdown. And he said that together let us fight it. And I'm sure that this can happen in terms of terrorism also. This can happen with regard to extremism also. So I think that press has to be a partner, wherein press, if it raises any issue, the government should also look at it from the point of view of the people that yes, there is a genuine issue that is being raised, we should be addressing that. And the press should also ensure that they don't raise any issue which in any way affects the national security or integrity or unity of the country. So this has to be a balance and a middle path, as Professor Kalinga rightly pointed out.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor KG Suresh and Professor Kalinga Seneviratne, joining us from Sydney. Very critical and very important points that have been raised by our experts, that the ownership pattern makes a hell lot of difference in the media's transparency and credibility. So, this is a special appeal to my viewers. Every time a media house owner goes to you, most of the people consider media as beggars. I have seen when media asks for an ad or media asks for donations, your irresponsible behavior by considering media as a begging bowl has to be changed. Now you have to invest in media. So this appeal to all the Muslims or all the oppressed, people in the society. If you want media to be responsible, you have to invest on it. You have to donate it. You can't claim and cry that media should be, secular. Media should be liberal, but you don't contribute in the growth and prosperity of media. Second point, amazingly said by Professor K.G. Suresh, the Media Council of India should be formed, which gives, just like the Chamber of Commerce that we have in between, in the business, like FICCI, CII, the way they function. I think there we should be a Media Council of India giving more or bigger teeth to it in its functioning hours. Thank you so much. Keep watching the Policy Times.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful speech.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good discussion.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Stay safe.